I might as well do a video one more time. Get even more. We want as much documentation as possible. There's the door. It looks like stone, actually a door. This is where this one ends. We come to the left. Extra little chamber over there. Turn this way. This one runs parallel. There's one on that side. Parallel to this. And there's the tube tunnel. Just went as far as I could down there. Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Trevor Grassi. I'm here with my friend Richard Gabriel. And today we're going to be talking about one of the most exciting complexes on the Giza Plateau that we've both been so passionately studying for many years. And yeah, welcome, Richard. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. Publicly, yes. As we've had it many times privately. So we're going to be talking about the NC2 complex that is in the northwest corner of the Giza Plateau. And this is a tomb complex cave system that goes deep into the heart of the plateau. Yeah, I've been working with you for the past couple of years. I first met you through Bill Brown, who is a mutual friend of ours, who you've been working with for a very long time. And yeah, there's a lot of crossover between what you're doing and what Bill's doing. And this is one of the most important leads on how to potentially get down into the very deep, important places underneath the Giza Plateau that the world knows very little about because it's been closed off. Excuse me. So, yeah, I think we're going to start by trying to go through and tell a little bit of basic context about this, but it's a very exciting subject to get into because I don't think anyone on Earth knows quite as much about this structure as you do. And aside from you and I and Andrew Collins and his team and Zahi Awas and his team, there's basically no one on record that's ever even been inside. And we know that there have been other people inside there, but no one else on record or sharing media, video footage from there. So we're going to show a lot of very rare footage. Yeah, first of all, this there's no context for this discovery in all of history until really it was Colonel Howard Weiss had said like one line about it or something, that there was some animal mummies over there, that it was an animal cemetery he had found. Very little information from him. Basically, the only real documentation we have comes from Henry Salt and Giovanni Caviglia, and this was early to mid 1800s. Do you know the exact date on that? I forget, but
1817.
Okay, yeah. So no one ever spoke about this structure ever in history before that point. And then they gave us some very interesting diary entries we're going to get into. And essentially nobody knew about this site until around 2007 or 8. Those diaries were first published. It came into the public view. Is that right? And so this is what Andrew Collins is the one who really brought this to the public attention right in 2008. I think it was, he finally got in there because he was following the journal entries of Salt and Caviglia that were newly published and gave some clues as to where this thing was. But so essentially, up until 2008, no one knew about this thing. And afterwards, ever since, once it was brought to the public attention, Dr. Hawass went in and put a gate over it, and it's been sealed. So it's pretty much been unknown up until 2008 and then inaccessible since then. So you and I are two of the only people on Earth who have had the privilege of getting to be inside this space. And I think we'll get into this now in more detail. But yeah, basically, I was very lucky just a couple months ago to catch the gate open. Otherwise, there's no way to get in. It's one of the most protected places. None of the guards. It's so difficult to finagle an entrance, which is kind of more what you did because you're a very thrifty Gizatologist expert. You know all these people on the plateau. You're very involved in the village of Nazlet El Saman right there. And you really know how to be smart and respectful and all these things, how to get into some of these places that are difficult to get into. So, so yeah, I think maybe we should start getting into in 2008 when Andrew first found this. It was with Nigel Skinner Simpson and Sue Collins. The three of them did some documentation in there, and when they brought it forward to the public, first of all, Zahi said, for one thing, there's no caves in there at all whatsoever. But then a few months later, he was in there with his own film team for his show Chasing Mummies, and you saw him walking all through the caves. But then he just said, "Oh, they end here. It's nothing much to see." Well, we know that's not true. And we're going to bring forward today a lot of the evidence that has been completely just walked past, ignored, and absolute proofs that this cave system goes much deeper than Zahi claims where it ends. Andrew agrees, I think, also that it's very clear based on Sultan Caviglia's diary entries that it goes past the point where any of us have been so far. So this is the basic context of what we're going to look at. Now we're going to get into all these details, and I would ask that maybe you could share some of your experience from back in that period around 2008, 9. This is when you were actually going in there, same time period as Collins, and he ended up writing this whole book Beneath the Pyramids about that, and putting out a documentary about it, Lost Caves of Giza, which unfortunately, the Lost Caves of Giza, he didn't put too much of his actual footage in there. And I did think that he had some other lots of footage from in there that I saw on YouTube at one point, but I couldn't find it ever again. I'm not sure if it's still up, but his book and film really brought a lot of attention to it. And at the same time, you were kind of doing these missions in there to really, I think what happened was you were going much deeper than he could go with the lights he had and things. You started taking photographs of every surface. You started seeing things that no one else was seeing. And I know there's some really amazing stories that were going on at that time period. So yeah, I'll ask you to fill us in on that story of what was going on back then for starters.
Okay, then. Yeah, thanks, Trevor. Yeah, you're given a good grounding actually to lead us into it. I'll put a little bit of extra context to it, perhaps that would help any listener. And there will be photographs that people can orientate themselves to later on. They can access after this in their own time also. So I'll do some verbal descriptions to help people at this stage. Northcliffe 2, of course, it's a designation. It stands for Northcliffe 2 is NC2. There is actually an NC1 as well as NC2. And the entrance, if you look at the old records, the one that we refer to is actually NC1. But somehow, that got mixed up in the descriptions and everybody knows and refers to it as NC2, but they're actually reversed. There is an NC1 there, and also confirmed to me in a conversation with Mark Lehner, and in a conversation with the director of the plateau, I can say that it is known that along that cliff, and if I could describe it first of all, the highest part of the plateau is beyond the Great Pyramid, and the highest part is actually occupied or was occupied with the Harvard building. That was used by our predecessors exploring the plateau, Salt Caviglia et al. And beyond that, the 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 hill drops away. I hesitated to just say cliff. You could argue it's like a cliff dropping down, but it's a sand cliff. It drops away at the back of that area. So the entrances to NC1, NC2 are a little way down the back, over the back of the highest point. Okay. And to finish what I was going to say a minute ago, I am aware and has been confirmed by those who know and in charge that there are other entrances along that whole strip of what we call cliff, the rear cliff, dropping down behind the Harbour building or where that was. The Harbour building, of course, now is the built up restaurant that's on the top of the hill there. And we can bring that into the conversation a bit later because there is a huge significance to that being there and being built in conjunction with the fact that beneath it almost there is this warren of access passages and tunnels and chambers. And I don't know, maybe I ought to throw it in now. You know, the conversation that I had with Mark Lehner last year, where I referred to the fact that I was concerned to the building work going on for this restaurant when it was so close to the foundations of that, it would surely be in danger of causing damage to the NC2 system below it. And he agreed with me and he said that it concerned him. And he said he voiced his opinion at the time in opposition to the footings and foundations being built for the restaurant being so close to what was known to be beneath it. But he was ignored. He said he said I couldn't do anything about it. I was ignored.
Mm-hmm.
So
that was an older building that they just renovated into
no,
the
it's more than that.
restaurant.
No, they've done demolishing, and the restaurant is huger. But the
They did a
original
lot of
Harvard building,
parking lot construction and things like that, and recently to renovate
yes,
it. Is that right?
that's right. Yes,
Yeah.
we actually stayed. I can say it now because who's going to hold us to account for it all? You know, in the times that I was able to get into NC2 after the metal gate was put on there. I will say, perhaps a little enigmatically, that because I don't want to get anybody else into trouble, that a system like that inevitably is going to have other entrances.
Yeah.
So I, I
Maybe I
found
can
my
pull
way
up
into it.
a satellite image while you're talking about this and show. I was going to try and use the image you have on your wall right behind you, but I'll just pull up Google Maps so we can talk about this and point out what you're talking about. Here's the three pyramids, and you're talking about over here. You have this is the restaurant. That's the building, the Harvard building you're talking about, and the tomb of the look. It's even labeled. This is the Tomb of the Birds. That's the name that Andrew Collins gave to it based on the fact that there's these reports
There
of
are birds,
there was
yes.
bird mummies and
In the
so
niches to the entrance into the system.
yeah, so
So
this is a road kind of coming through the Sphinx is right over here. You come all the way back up to this northwest corner, and practically no one goes up here at all. But then you have to kind of come over to here. This is where the whole cliff is running. And then you have NC1 and then NC2 here. But the
yeah, that's
cliff
right.
is facing north, so it's like you have to go
That's right.
up and out behind here, kind of, just to give some
Yeah,
context. Because we're going to be talking about how it kind of connects over this direction later on. So
over towards the pyramid. Yes, that's right.
here are the two Great Pyramids. There's the Japanese work site. And now I'm walking up to here. This is the restaurant they just built on top of the Tomb of the Birds and the Cave of the Snake. And maybe as a monitoring point, but I'm gonna try and walk over. Down there is where the entrance to the Tomb of the Birds is. And I'm hoping that someone left the gate open and I can sneak in today. We'll see. Okay, I made it down the hill towards where the Tomb of the Birds is. The NC2 complex. I'm now out of sight from all the guards and nobody stopped me yet, so let's see if we can get in the door. Maybe somebody left it open if we are very lucky. Let's see. Oh, we have an open door. This is one of the two entrances. Wow. Look at this. Someone left the gate open. Okay. Wow. I've been dreaming of this day for a long time. These were the shells where birds were mummified. There's still a nest up in one of them. Wow. Wow. Here's another nest. Down here. There's a whole lot of stuff. This is a rare opportunity to see the Tomb of the Birds. Okay. These niches. These had maybe resonance chambers or mummies kept inside them. Now, this is a chamber over here. I'm gonna need to get out my flashlight. And that is the entrance to the Cave of the Snake. I'm gonna get out my flashlight and start a new video.
It's pretty darn clear when you go inside NC2 that there are two distinct forms of construction in there. There are chambers in there that are very, very sharp and defined, and others that are much more rough hewn. And you can also see in the parts that are closer to the entrance that there are areas where the rough rock surfaces have been plastered over. There's a lot of it damaged. So, I mean, I'll go into that a little bit later. I don't want to jump ahead of myself now because there are things to talk about inside. But just to sort of square the circle with regards to interest in there and going in there, from my own part, with my my partner Judith, we found ourselves on the plateau many times. We were drawn to Egypt. Our pathway is an intuitive one, not what you might call an academic in any sense. You know, I had a good education and I went to the old grammar type school and so on. So, you know, I've got more than mush in my head, but I didn't follow what's called an academic pathway. As far as my interest is concerned in obsessively chasing our ancient roots, my pathway is an intuitive one. My pathway has also been filled with, oh crumbs, what I like to call supernormal events throughout. That is just part of my day-to-day existence, still is now, always was from earliest memories as a child. And when I first visited Egypt, several years before I first started exploring in Egypt. I did have an experience, um, which I describe in a book that I've written, a biographical book about it all. Um, but I knew from that experience that I would return, I'd be involved in exploration in Egypt. I didn't know that my main focus, would end up being NC2, although it has drawn me to explore in the Western Desert, and many other places on and around the plateau. So um, Judith and I were there, and we'd had a week of absolutely mind-boggling experiences. I mean, absolute mind-blowing experiences where, without having wishing for everything, but hoping for everything, and uh, just hoping that things would just happen. We didn't force them. We didn't plan. We just went, and things happened. We found ourselves in the presence of, talking to. We were with Zahiwas, would you believe, with his team. We found ourselves in the care of his bodyguards. It turned out that the guy that bumped into us on this particular day turned out to be the father of one of the bodyguards, who said he'd been waiting for us, for God's sake. That was the day we only had a few hours to go, and we were returning home that day, and it was over by Menkora. And he says, "Come with me, come, come, come." And he took us and led us through to where Mark Laner had been working, and he'd just recently found a female sarcophagus there, and the buzz was about the sarcophagus. The police chief was there. I mean, he's a towering guy. He is brilliant, though, huge sense of humor, and all the guys in this barbed wire around the whole area. And we were led through, and we just absolutely, like the rabbit was caught in the headlights, can't not believing. I kept having to say to Judith, she's saying, my God," she was exclaiming. I said, "We got to keep it down, keep it cool, just go with the flow of it all." And we ended up being taken down 3 levels, 3 distinct levels, shown a tunnel down. This is down where Mark was working. And not of that day, that one day he wasn't there. He had gone off somewhere else. But we were taken in, and the police chief shook hands with us and said, "No, you go enjoy, have a good time."
Awesome.
Uh, in the company of the father of one of the bodyguards. So we went with him, and that last shaft that he showed us, where it was cut, taken up the whole of the floor, pitch dark, sharp as a razor, the sides cut, and he had, God knows from where, but he was prepared with a newspaper. We weren't prepared with all the lights and floods and everything that we would normally have. We had barely a head torch or whatever. But he had a newspaper, broadsheet newspaper with him, crunched up, and he told us to stop, don't go further. We couldn't see a thing. But he lit the newspaper, and immediately we could see that the passage floor disappeared. There was a huge shaft, and he dropped the newspaper down into that shaft. And as far as we were able to see it, it was still burning when it disappeared from sight. It must have
Wow.
been an enormous, it just went
Wow.
deeper than any of the shafts, even the solar cross shafts.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
deepest shaft ever that we saw while we were there.
Mm.
And he went like this.
Hmm.
So he walked out, but he showed it to us.
He didn't let you
So
take a video of that.
yeah, if
They say
only.
just for your eyes only. We'll show you, but you can't show anyone else.
This was our early days, there, and it was all an intuitive journey. But when we came
Yeah.
out of there, we didn't have a lot of time left, and we went, and we had to say goodbye, and we were wandering around the top of the plateau there. And of course, there was in our minds the fact that, it must have been, I don't know, I'm guessing now, within the week previous, the announcement had come out about, or maybe a little bit longer, I don't know, but about NC2, about what had Andrew and Nigel had rediscovered, you could say. And that was a great buzz. And I remember speaking with Judith, and she said, well, from what they were saying, it's over there somewhere, isn't it? Just sort of generally pointing over the back end of the plateau. And we'd done some wandering about there, but not a huge amount. We'd actually done more wandering around at the back end of Mencora. And we've had conversations with the guys that worked there when they were excavating ground to use for the build-up of the new roadway layout as it went in between Kefren and the Great Pyramid.
Hmm.
And while they were digging there, they had found um, temple blocks, the red granite blocks, missing ones from the temple, the Sphinx temple. And he said that when they uncovered those, he said they put a sort of D notice on that site. They had to stop work. He said, and they cordoned off, made sure no tourists or anybody came near it. And they hiked out several of these blocks. Um, because there was a plan at one time to reset the blocks. Dozens and dozens had been recovered. I mean, they were still scattered around the Sphinx Temple area, going back to
Yeah.
that time period. And that was abandoned because in amongst the blocks they found them with um, hieroglyphic inscriptions relating to the construction of the plateau. And they were put onto flat loaders and made to disappear, like so many things there.
Mm.
So we spend a lot of time around that area, and there are stories to tell about that. But in any event, on this day, and I was dragging my heels. I thought, oh, God, we can't get into anything else. I want to get the stuff ready. We've got a plane to catch home. But we sort of looked at each other. It was a sort of intuitive conversation. Oh, come on, sort of thing. Come on. And
Let's give it a try.
let's give it. And we just walked over to that side
Hmm.
and we walked like a crow straight onto NC2.
Hmm.
And the entrance there, I mean, recognized it straight away. Oh, this is, even though it was piled up with sand, at that time, the entrance was up to head height with sand.
Yeah.
The sand actually blown sand down inside. It was a long time later before that sand was cleared.
Yeah, you
So
can still see actually today on the wall, you can see the level where the sand was at. This was like it was filled all the way up to the door. You would have to crawl in through the very top of the
exactly,
door to get inside.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And when we got to it, and I said to Jude, I said, I got to go in. I got my camera. I said, I'll get what I can. I thought myself, well, I've got nothing much of a torch or anything, but I know the flash of the camera would be enough. And, I might be able to fumble and stumble my way down. I'd no expectations, but I can tell you that every hair on my body was standing. There was something, I, it's so hard to put into words, but there was a knowingness. There was this, I call it like a spirit wind. It's like a static discharge.
Yeah.
Everything was screaming at me, and and I knew that this wasn't just finding somewhere, being excited about finding somewhere. It was
Yeah.
more than that. And I went
Yeah.
in on the top of the sand there, and I said, "Look, I more or less said there was a sort of understanding between us. Look, you'll have to ad lib it outside. I've got to go in. I've got to." And when I went in, um, I thought I'll just do the sort of fairy dance and go this way. Wherever it allows me to go, I'll go. And
Hmm.
everywhere I go, even though I'm stumbling, I can't see much of anything. I go click, 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 click. Now my camera is a good one, and I was clicking every time it flashed. And I was getting this vision in front of me, and I was going, "Geez." My mind was blowing, and I was. It was like it was like it's like a blessed orgasm. It was unbelievable the feeling. So
Yeah.
I went down through as far as even I got down without knowing at the time. The anatomy of the place I didn't really figure. I was taking stuff in as I was able to see it from the flash and from the feeble torch, and down to the tube tunnel. and that you had to go through that, and at the time I could see that you could get through, but I'm
Yeah.
thinking about Judith outside, and I've been in there quite felt like quite some time doing, but I was click 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 click
Well,
in.
it's important maybe to say also that like the what Andrew called the tomb of the birds, this is the structure that's in the front, and that what he calls the cave of the snake, because this is legendarily guarded by this enormous snake named El Hanash or Agatha Demon.
That's a demon.
Either of these names we can talk about it later on, but I just want to clarify that there's this tomb structure in the front that's called, we call it Tomb of the Birds, is like these 90-degree flat smooth walls, and we'll show all this because I'll show the video of me going through the whole thing for
Yes.
the footage, but you'll see that once you get to the back of the structure, which is not that big really, it has kind of a passage off to the left and to the right, which we'll look at in a second. But it's basically a short straight corridor that goes back to a raised up kind of altar space or something. And then there's just this one masked up section on the wall there that was filled in with stones. And then part of those stones were broken out. So at some point, you have this little entrance that actually cuts into the cave system, which is much more naturally formed. It's this very organic, looks like water was probably involved in the weathering of it somehow. But it's more a natural looking cave that's been modified. So these are two separate sections. And as you're talking about going from one, finally getting into the cave system, this is the part that has been more denied by authorities. And,
Yes.
eventually Hawass acknowledged it and went to the end of it, to the places we're going to talk about at the end. But it's still only a very short stretch of the cave too that we're talking about, which we'll get to, what's beyond it.
That's
But
right. I mean, you've got the first part. I mean, I'm not won't take up time, but I mean, I've got the poster
yeah,
here,
let's
which
break that out.
and this is actually it's like a mandala actually because it's showing three different levels. The lowest level is the gray here, either side. You got the entrance to the whole complex
Yeah.
here. The yellow is where you step inside, and there are steps down either side and separate from each other, and a passage going through the middle here. And then at the end of that passage, there is a chamber here where my thumb is, and then a step up to go into the green, which is the reception chamber, as I've called it, of huge importance, and a secondary reception chamber here. And the passageway leads out of the reception chamber down, oh, sorry, the second one, down apparently into the roof of the lower sections here.
Okay,
Um,
let me pull up a little bit easier to show. I'll show the map. I have this one. Maybe
okay,
that's a
yes.
little easier to see. Is that okay? So I can just show a general, explain some of this for you, that all of this red area, this is all the lower level. So when you come in from the entrance in the north, you have these two staircases going down to these lower corridor on the right and a lower on the left, two chambers here. So all this red is going down these stairs from the main entrance. And this yellow part, like you're talking about, is the ground level as you're walking in. And when you get all the way back at the end here, this is where the passage opens up. This is the beginning of the caves that you call the reception chamber, the
Yes.
1 and 2 reception chambers. So I just want to establish that so people can see this green part is the beginning of the cave that goes 350 feet this way from beyond here. Okay. I'm inside the Tomb of the Birds right now. I've been waiting for this day for a long time. My friend Richard Gabriel has thoroughly documented this cave system and tomb system. And thankfully today, the locked doors Dr. Hawass put up on the gate were finally left open. Now I've walked in, this is the main corridor in, and I've got my flashlight to see this room in here. So this is one of the main chambers. This is a very special place. We have a dirt floor. There could be more shafts going down from this floor. We will see. This chamber is off to the left here. At the end, altar stone. This is the end right there. That's the entrance to the cave of the snake. Before I go in there, let's check out some of these chambers. First, this one is to the left. When you first walk in, this is very steep. We've got birds still in here. These are some of the protectors. It's okay, bird. Now you have to be careful of snakes and scorpions in here. This is the chamber off to the left. There's 2 chambers on this side. Again, you got sand on the floor. There could be more excavations down here. So, this isn't the brightest light, but you can see all these carvings. The ceiling is carved. Graffiti up there from foolish people who don't respect this place. Now, the second chamber to the left. There's a huge mound of sand in here. All over the ground. Wow. Look at this. Okay. The main chamber. Let's come over to this side. There's a lot more. Look at that shaft going down. That goes very, very deep. You do not want to fall down there. Okay. I'm going to carefully get into this area at least. Okay, here's one chamber with another shaft, potentially down there. Let's look at this one. That goes very, very deep. Another one to the right in here. You can hear the bats. Many bats back in here. Here's the window with the jawbone. There's a skull. There's the second chamber on the right. Look how thin those walls are. The bats don't like my light. Some more bones and a skull. Third chamber on the right. There's some of the bats. There's an entrance up in that corner, connects to where we'll go in a second. Look how thin these walls are. Look at that. That connects into where we'll go next. Okay. This is the second chamber on the left. Back. The last chamber on the right. More bats. Amazing. Okay. Now, this chamber has a carved space in the floor. And this is right underneath where we'll go in a second. There's an altar right above here. It sadly has been broken up there. We'll show where it leads. Okay. Now I'll extend my selfie stick here so I can reach down a little bit into this hole. Okay, that goes very deep, and if I'm feeling very brave, I'll follow this rope down after we check out the rest. First, we're gonna go see the cave of the snake.
As we're looking at it there now, you can see that there's a pink reddish dot or circular object or something showing at the lower part of that picture, just above and to the right of where N for north is showing. Now that actually is just my depiction to show where the roof, there was a cave in at some
Yes.
stage from the roof.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. And the cave-in was almost perfectly circular, like a cupcake had dropped from the ceiling down into it. From what I've seen of recent photographs since the destruction that we'll talk about that's been done to it, that has been smashed and bashed. That actually had illustrations on it, and I think that has been removed. Now, opposite that, this one's difficult to see because there's an X that shows to the left of that, where there's yellow and there's white. There is a chamber there, a small chamber, which now has been, the floor has been obliterated and dug.
This chamber?
Yes, and all the spoil from the floor now has been thrown up against the wall, the lower wall, to a height of 6 feet or more.
Yeah, it's all piled up on this side and it's dug
Yes.
out to this corner. This is super deep and all
That's
the
right.
rocks are piled up over on this side when you look in from this way.
Indeed. Now that chamber is what I call one of the old ones, because this is where I've got to make this distinction, which is so important. This is from two time periods. Where you're looking at the green on this picture, those reception chambers, which, don't be deceived, are 30 foot long.
Yeah.
And 18 feet by 30 feet. You can see there. I put a couple of measurements on there.
Mhm.
You know, I measured the whole of the system on one of the occasions I was in there. And so it's scaled. It
Thank you
is,
for that, by the way. That's great.
yeah, it's reasonably accurately scaled. Okay. Now
Yeah,
that corridor, you can see the corridor there bends off to the right and ends
yeah,
underneath the green chamber, the reception chamber.
yeah,
Okay. But it is significant that where it ends, you can see in relationship, it is below where the entrance of the tunnel starts that goes on 350 feet down to the tube tunnel where the arrow
yeah.
is.
Yeah,
So
so
that's
this one is coming
significant.
in from below and ending, and this one is above,
Yes.
beginning, going, continuing
Yeah.
almost the same direction. This chamber has a carved space in the floor, and this is right underneath where we'll go in a second. There's an altar right above here.
Now, to give orientation, where that tunnel bends to the right and stops,
Hmm.
if you look represented underneath it, if you look very closely, you can see there's I've marked ALTAR, altar. Now,
Yeah,
that is an altar stone that was there originally, which had a bowl scooped into the bedrock below it. And on the lower section of that reception chamber, because split right down the middle, where the altar stone is,
right about
that is
here.
higher ground there. And then it drops down 2 foot or more, following the bedrock down to the lower part
This side.
next to the second reception chamber.
Yeah.
Now, from the second reception chamber, tunnels from there go along the line of the ceiling, and you can see where I have squiggled them to show where they meet up with those chambers on the right-hand side.
Yep, over to this way.
Now, those holes are still available from within those chambers.
Here's the second chamber. And up in that corner, that's where it connects over to the chamber up top. Look how thin that wall is, too.
I
Yeah, I can
climbed up
see.
and into the tunnels as far as I could get on both of those. Now they're blocked because there's rock falling down inside them, but they clearly join up to the second reception chamber. And then further down the continuing passageway, there is a niche to the right-hand side that splits into two passageways. I believe that the right-hand passageway joins up with this continuing ceiling tunnel, shall I put it. And I think that that was part of and the source of water erosion and so on that passed through there. I believe, therefore, or I would propose, therefore, there's a potential there for the original entrance to NC2 actually being up within the area of where those right-hand chambers are, up on the surface.
Ah,
And I think that those chambers, that there were eroded chambers there of some description that were then enlarged, because you can see clearly that those chambers have been enlarged and worked on. They're not all pristine and new. And I also have to say that within those chambers on the walls, not just down in the deeper part, but on those walls, some of them, there are the most stupendous illustrations that can be recovered again, or I have been recovering, working on with deep digital analysis from ultra high definition photographs that I've taken of every surface in there. There are distinctions between them because as I analyze photographs going down deeper, there's a wall section, for example, where there are flying craft on it.
mm,
Pause. There are sections where secondary jungle is depicted with pyramids, with light poles apparently shining light through the jungle that surrounds the pyramid forms. In the distance on the horizon from this one scene, there's a cityscape showing. You can't see it with the naked eye, but you sure can when you bring it out. You can recover it through digital analysis and so on and so on and so on. So the reason I'm saying all this now, and thanks Trevor for allowing me to do this, is that there is an ancient meaning here that it is easy to lose um, by taking the picture as a whole. Are you able to drop that back again just for one moment, Trev?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to mention this. Where the passage veers to the right-hand side and links up with where the altar is, and just before where the real passage up above continues, there are two things to say. One is that below that altar, the the bedrock was hewn into the shape of an armchair, a throne, with the arms. Um, I've captured all this, by the way, in photographs, with the arms carved into animal forms.
Mm,
And beneath the altar, the bowl under it would sort of suggest the knee-jerk feeling that, oh, this was to do with some kind of sacrifice or something at one time.
mhm,
But I'm happy to say that um, the looking at the lower wall in that main reception chamber is a huge wall. And when I started working on that, on um,
I
doing
think
the
this wall right here.
yeah, the photo, yes, that's right. The photographic analysis on that, I found it was a huge frieze with the most stupendous detail locked onto that wall. And something clicked in my head, and I just knew that it told me this was nothing to do with sacrifice. This was
Yeah.
from an original time. This was to do with preparation, cleansing, preparing before going down deeper into what was below. Well, I'll pull it all together just to summarize it now. In what I'm writing up about the whole thing, I go into vastly more detail. But essentially, the point that I'm trying to get across, or I wish to get across, is that the NC2 system there are three levels as you walk into it. And the topmost level is the level that leads you down into the tunnel system, going down into the plateau. And the significance of what I'm trying to say is that I've been able to discern from within the system that parts of it belong to a time that is vastly, vastly older than the hewn chambers that are more associated with the front end, with the birds and other things, animals that have managed to get into the place. The lower system, um, the access to that would have been through what is now tunnel openings at the top of the hewn chambers in the entrance part, um, and through the step up that you talked about at the end of the main corridor going into NC2. And that was the area that was blocked off that caused so much trouble to identify the opening going into what I've called the reception chamber, which leads to the second reception chamber, both of which lead down into the tunnel system at the top of the picture that you're showing there, where the arrow is, where the green is.
Yeah.
So you step up into that, and that first reception chamber is of particular significance because it contains an altar stone. It drops level to the lower level. The two levels are joined by a throne, stone throne that was hewn from the bedrock, and animals are carved either side of it. The low in the as you're showing it now, the lower wall, which is a huge wall, in particular has an illustrated scene elaborately taking up the whole of that wall. Um,
This.
and yes, that's right. Yes. And all of that green part is what leads then into the lower system and belongs to an older time, a much, much, much older time.
Yeah.
Now, it's important to state that for the simple reason that when and if and when we get to the point to discuss the fact that in recent times, when I identified a lower way to get into this system beyond the tube tunnel that this leads to, a sort of a blockage point It's about 350 feet down. That this part of the system, the ancient part of the system, was so important, despite despite the fact that the artifacts, the illustrations, the layout, the significance of it were of astonishing importance archaeologically, historically.
Yeah,
It
maybe
is
actually, maybe
where
I
the
could,
authorities went in and smashed it to pieces.
yeah, maybe I could pull up the map. It shows how the cave of the snake from this reception chamber back here. This is what you're talking about, the older, the
All of that
more,
system was older, yes.
yeah, looking
The
like a natural cave system.
the
Everything that's part of the Tomb of the Bird structure is these straight walls and everything. But you're comparing that this section back here is clearly much more ancient looking, or could be far. It's a completely different style of structure than this very carefully carved out parallel walls and right angle corners. But it helps you to see how the cave extends off coming south from there. And this is the tube tunnel we're going to get to. I'll show your actual drawing of the cave system coming out from the back of the tomb too. You showed it a little more detail about how it's a straight shot going all the way back with a few of these offshoots on the sides. But it comes back to this point, which we'll get into this a little further along. But I just want to give a visual as to how this cave system comes off the back so people can differentiate between what you're saying is quite clearly different eras, if not different cultures, or a very stylistic difference between these two different parts of the complex.
and of course the importance and significance of that, Trevor, is the fact that when hang on, let me just wind the clock back a little bit here.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was last over there, I actually spoke with the director of the plateau, and he expressed great interest. I took some of my paperwork over there from where I was pulling a report together again on it all. And I told him, look, I've been in touch with the authorities a number of times on this, or tried to, and I explained to him my profound interest in the whole system and the information that I had managed to pull together, and I was willing to collaborate, pass this on to the Egyptian authorities, the antiquities, and so on, if they would give me some sort of modicum of interest. I didn't want to. I certainly wasn't chasing it for any gain other than knowledge and being a part of the uncovering of the knowledge.
So,
Um, and and I didn't get a response back. I got nothing except the feedback that I got that he had, and the assurances from him that he was going to bar the system, make sure it would be the most secure place on the entire plateau, was his words to me. But now I know why it was reported back to me some months later that the iron grille door was flapping and people were able to get in and out. And it was at that stage from a couple of other people that had been in a short way anyway and showed a little bit of film that there'd been a lot of destruction inside. Well, that led to me really finding out, then going to all my contacts and finding out for sure exactly what had happened. And I discovered, of course, that a team had been in there and they'd smashed the place to bits, smashed like hell. And you got to ask why would they smash history up like this? Why would they smash something of such importance if it led down into something that was profound down below? Could
yeah,
it be? Is it because? Well, I know that it is now. It's because of what the city that's below ground further on. And I blew the whistle. You see, I put another video out. I
yeah,
was profoundly saddened by it. It made me ill thinking about it, what they'd done inside. Now I knew I'd already deduced down at Kefren, the middle pyramid, where the cliff wall gives provides entrances along the wall to storage rooms and so on, except for the first one. Now, I'd already figured that from a previous visit and managed to get my arm in through the boulders that were blocking that entrance up and take photographs in there before the guards came rushing to pull me away. And I already figured from those photographs, there was an entrance. That was a breakthrough entrance further down beyond where Salt and Caviglia had got in at the tube tunnel, and that was a second entrance, and I sort of blew the whistle on that. Next thing
Yeah.
I knew, within 24 hours, literally overnight, they'd put a tent up over that area. And I know somebody who actually was part of the team that went in there. That's why I know so surely. So they went in there and they did some more GPR and they did more smashing and bashing. Why? Well, the GPR confirmed the fact that there is a cityscape below ground there, going very, very
Yeah.
deep, which is what
Oh,
we suspected. And the smashing and breaking, top side, lower side. If I quote these here, lower side, Captain Caviglia informed me that afterwards that he advanced in another direction 300 feet further, but found nothing to tempt him to continue his researches. This is beyond
okay. Yeah.
the chamber, beyond the tube tunnel. They were
Yeah.
smashing it because they wanted to deter people. They know the importance that the whole system leads down into what's below ground, the great secret of Giza. It's a secret of something that is there. There is great wealth, there's great power. Use that word in
Yeah.
whatever form. There is great power to be had by those who get their hands to that whatever's been left behind from previously advancements. And it's worth people dying for. It's
Yeah.
worth places being smashed for it to deter others.
Well, this is really we're jumping ahead into some things that I can share some more visuals for also, and but you're bringing up so many of the very important points right now. And maybe I was going to say this would be a good chance. We have so much evidence at this point, like you say. We'll mention the actions they took based on the exposures you put out to the public. Within a couple of days, they reacted. We'll get into that story, but even earlier on, back when you were first going into this area,
Yes.
you experienced something that really, really proves how much this means to the authorities, how far they're willing to go to cover this up, which further proves how
Yeah.
important it is and significant to the entire human race. Like you're
Yeah.
saying, it really, the actions of the ministry that we'll get into in a minute prove that they are aware that it is more than just a connection over to the story you're talking about that will show that it does go deeper into the very deep and very large spaces under Giza. That much is very, very clear based on their actions, whether it's proof or extreme probable cause. We can get into that, but can you tell us the story of
I know the
when
one you're
Andrew
talking about.
Collins first brought it forward? We know Zahi put the gate on the door, which I don't I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily. I think it did need to be protected, but because it's dangerous for people walking in there. It should be made clear that there are spiders, snakes, scorpions. There's holes you can fall in, a million ways to break your ankle or hypoxia, run out of air. There's a lot of dangers like that, but you had an experience that really proved the political dangers of exposing some of the truth that's down there. And so when Andrew Collins brought it forward, he actually got banned from Egypt. He got kicked out and he wasn't allowed to do any work there or be involved for a time at least. And then that was corrected. He's allowed back. But can you tell us the story of what happened in that time, the mix up that was very, very dangerous and
Okay.
scary?
Well, there was two occasions, Trevor. First one wasn't anything to do with anybody except myself, where um, arrangements have been put in hand. And I've worked with officials and more liberal officials, shall we say, um, authoritative officials, I will say, which has cost me an arm and a leg that enabled me to gain access. Okay. It's done. It's a done deal. The results are far, far more important
Yeah.
than considering how naughty, naughty, naughty I was to get in there.
You got to do what you got to do.
And
Uh,
I ended up spending over many, many, many times. I ended up spending so, so, so many hours in there. And I'm going to reiterate now, I've said it on every one of my broadcasts. And that is that in there, I measured, I observed, I learned, I deduced, I figured out, I recorded, but I touched nothing. I took nothing. And on more than one occasion, when I visited and came out, on one occasion, I was actually strip searched, but I
mm,
was searched on occasions when I came out to verify or validate that I had nothing. I maybe sand that had got inside my shoes or whatever. But that wasn't my purpose. My purpose was to understand what this was all about. I had an experience in there, an actual visitation with someone appeared to me in there. Well, I mean, that story's been told. I can perhaps tell that at a later time again. But that NC2 to me was something more. There's whether or not could it be pretentious and say in a previous life, who the hell knows? But there was something about it, NC2, and what it leads to down there that has a hold on me, an
yeah.
obsessive hold on me. I
It really
dream of
seemed to
this.
drive you to document. You had this
Yeah,
really strong passion to film, photograph everything, it seems.
everything,
Driven to. Mm,
and the evidence I've got, the time-stamped photographs that prove authoritative misdoing in there.
mm,
Pause for a moment. But let's go on to what you were referring to, just to show the importance of it. On two occasions, right? The first one, nothing to do with Colin. The second one was Andrew, rather. And the first one was that I was conducted to NC2. I had my time within NC2 on this one occasion. I came out of NC2, and the deal was, the logistics of it was that I was going to be taken to a place and I would have to wait there a little while, and then someone else would come and remove me from the plateau. I won't talk time or anything. It wasn't light, just say that. But when someone came, I heard voices, and I was expecting no voices because it was going to be a person, a senior person. Two people turned up. One I recognized straight away. He was one of the skanks that had turned up for a work shift to with the people that I was doing this with. Um, and he demanded that he wanted to be part of this and get paid also.
mm.
And he was there accompanied by a very furiously angry policeman, someone I hadn't seen before. And I instantly knew that there was a problem here.
Yeah.
Well, it took seconds for me to find out how much of a problem it was, because the policeman had his pistol out of his side holster, and he had it against me. He had it pressing against my forehead,
Wow.
pushing me back against the side like this. I mean, fully in my forehead. And the other guy was screaming and going off in Arabic, obviously terrified.
Mm,
And in those split seconds, what do? You go by instinct. I thought that, and I thought I'm this close to being dead, and where I am, I'd be disappeared because I know of others who've been disappeared.
yeah.
So my instinctive that time, thank God, prior to it, I had taken off my hazmat suit, which I always used there, um, to protect me from, and also to make sure that I was sealed against anything and everything there.
Mm,
And I buried it in the sand. exactly where I was at that time, that staging point. It was a hidden, very, very concealed staging point.
Hmm.
And what do you do? In a split second, you act by instinct. So I went into a probably probably worthy of 10 Oscars because I went into a fake heart attack. I started to fake a heart attack. And I dropped to my knees, and he's still pushing the pistol against my head. The other guy is going absolutely nuts. Um, and he was more concerned about me, expiring from a heart attack, it seems, than the fact that he got the pistol against my head.
Yeah.
Well, while I was sort of in this crouched position, like, and he's gibbering on that, he's fumbling and fighting in my pockets and everything, and I heard my host's name being mentioned, and they were grabbing anything and everything I got in my pockets. Well, I got a little burner phone. There was only one number on there. It was my host's number. Well, they knew who that was because he's one of the dons of the village.
Yeah.
And a phone call was made, and I'm doing all the frothing BS and all that on the floor like a idiot, losing my mind. And he got through straight away. I'm not going to mention his name. He summoned them. Now, come. And that was enough. Instantly, he broke away from me and grabbed the other one and told me, you stay. Left me a bottle of water to recover or whatever. And off they went. Well, they came back. I'll cut a long story short in there. When my host got his hands on him, he put him straight. He still had to pay some honor money, which I paid back. But all my goods were returned to me and I was let out and made to come disappear off the plateau safely,
Mm.
shaken but not stirred.
Wow.
On the second occasion, on another separate occasion, more pertinent perhaps to what we were saying earlier. Um, yeah, I through my house, I said, I've been down in there a lot of times now. Maybe I should try it, and and I'll put some of my saved money to it. I know it would cost a lot; it always does. So yeah, we can arrange that. Yeah, pay the money, and that'll be sort of semi-official. It won't be official, but the official will know, and
Yeah.
you'll be conducted to it. But it'll be on safety. You'll be allowed in for a set time, and that's it. Be sort of semi-official,
Yeah.
and the boss would know. You know. Okay, fine, great. I thought, great. Well, this time I can relax a little bit. I know there was a couple of things I specifically each time I went in. I was checking on the research that had come out of the previous time because each time yielded more and more and more. And I was starting to understand the system more and more and more.
Right.
So I went in each time with a target. I need to find this out. I need to observe this. I need to measure this and just check this or that or that. So, okay then. And also to see what had been done in the meantime, because I know that rape crews had been in there. I've got As I say, I've got time, date stamped photographs that show you before and after of what was done by them when they went in there.
Yeah. And especially my
Uh,
my recent footage from just a couple months ago. We're looking through all of that right now. Some of the differences between whatever that was 15 years ago
but
or
they were,
something
yes,
like that.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
huge difference.
Huge difference.
So on this occasion, there I was, and the deal was I'd go to the back entrance. People don't know the back entrance because there's a police station there on the fence line. It's all been built up now. It's much more secure and there's lots more been done. But at the time then, it was pretty rough. As you say, you're talking 15 years ago. Um, and let's say a uniformed person was taking me in the car from the police station area, and I was going to be brought over to the Harvard and handed over there to one of the crew guys work there. I actually between you, me, and the gatepost. I knew the guys there anyway already. Which I slept at the Harbour Building a few times. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Um, so that was the deal. Now, at the time, the guys at the station, oh, they're all hooting and hollering and having a laugh together and all the rest of it, all policemen, good natured and so on. And I was in the car. The car was, but he was talking away, gibbering away, and I'm thinking, God, just get going, just get going. Come on, I just want to get, I want to get down there again. Come on. Anyway, he kept talking, so I'm sat in the car there, and apart from his car, it's quiet, over the back end of the, you're just on the edge of the sort of urban desert, if you like, and there's no other noise, but. While I'm sat there, windows down, getting a bit of air, fresh air, and he's talking as well, you could hear in the distance, and it made the guys, everybody sort of stop. You could hear vroom, vroom, sounds revving, heavy, revving, like a car racing. That's what it sounded like, but no lights. Now, that's not unusual because anybody that goes out to that part of the desert drives without lights anyway. You know, they're all about their business, going on the little safaris and things. They won't have lights on the car. They know where to put them and so on. So we could hear this car, which was getting a bit louder and louder. And it was furious as well, like a racing car. And I'm sitting there thinking, oh, Christ, what's happening now? I want to get going. So the noise got louder quickly. Next thing I know, I recognize the car. It's our host, my host's car. And it comes squealing in the entrance there through the gate area and it up alongside almost the car I was sitting in. Vroom, and there's the dust going up and everything, mushroom, nobody could choking. And I could see my host, he's out of his car, comes across to speak in the driver's side to the guy that was there that I knew, uniform, and he calls across him to me before he speaks to him. And he said, Richard, he said, get out of the car. And I look puzzled. I'm looking, what the, what? He said, don't argue. He says, get out of the car, go in my car, sit. And I'm thinking, what a total bewilderment, puzzlement. What the heck? And he said, go. And when he saw me hesitating and questioning my mind, go, he said. So I reluctantly, and I went round and in, sat in the passenger of his car. But, what the hell? So he talked for a little bit there, and then came, got into his car, and reversed and to drive out again. And he said to me, "Say nothing." He said, "We'll stop shortly. We stop, and I can talk." But it wasn't shortly. He drove quite some distance away, out into the sort of called urban desert. And it's not like the Western desert. That's a whole different ball game. The other side of Beni Suef. I'm
Yeah.
talking, uh, anyway. Eventually found a place there. I could describe it, and then somebody else would recognize that. But let's say it's a known place, hidey place in the desert, where you're below the skyline and you can hide and talk and muffled. So he did, pulled the car up, switched off, and he's sitting there. And it was like he went, release safe now. He's talking. He said, right. He said, um, he of course knew he was in on the arrangement for that night. Um, and he said, thank God, praise be to and Allah and all that, that I managed to catch you before you went. And the timing of this was while it was just on the tail end of the timing for when everything blew up publicly between Andrew and Zai, where there was bad medicine there publicly.
Yeah. Andrew was kind of on the blacklist at
Oh,
that point.
It was very
That's where you
bad.
get
And
they would get
Zahi,
upset.
and what he told me was, he said that I must understand. He said that Zahi was furious. He was very, very, very angry that he'd lost face. He'd had to defend himself publicly because of what Andrew was saying. You know, whether Andrew was right or not, it's irrelevant. It was the fact
Yeah.
that somebody was challenging him.
Yeah. Well, he did say there's no caves here when, he could have just checked.
So what he did, well, this is the story I'm told that was reported back. I can't tell it firsthand. I'm giving you it as it was given to me.
Yeah.
And what was given to me was that in his unhappiness at what had happened, he had sort of done what he does, and we've seen it on film. He takes it out on the people around him, and the person around him happened to be the next guy in line, plateau boss.
Mhm.
So he was stinging like hell. And when at that time the message came through or the information filtered through that somebody was paying to be allowed to go into NC2, he believed it was Andrew
Yeah.
and that they were going to be host to Andrew.
So they confused you for Andrew at a time when Andrew wasn't supposed to be in Egypt at all.
That's right. And Egypt was not, Andrew was not going to be allowed to leave Egypt.
Yeah. Yeah, they weren't
What
happy
I was
about it.
told, what I was told from my man, he said, if you had gone, Richard, if you had gone, he said, you would have been given a lesson and you would not have come back from there. So, I mean, it was clear. He managed to intervene. And the reason he managed to figure it, he said, because on the, um, what's the name of it? On the end where the Harvard is, one of the guys there is a personal friend, well, through family related friend of my host. And he realized what was happening and phoned back through to my guy and told him, you got to do something now, or he's not going to come back. So that trip tipped him off, and he immediately jumped in his car to intercept me, which he managed to do.
Yeah.
So on two occasions, he saved my life.
Mhm. This is a really great, yeah, person who's become a friend of mine too. I'd say thank you. Definitely,
I can't have
amazing.
words that are
Eh,
good
If
enough.
if that had not worked out, if there wasn't something upstairs coordinating, making this happen at the exact right second, you would have been killed and dropped into a shaft and covered over with sand.
As others have that we know of.
Yeah. And that would have been Andrew if it was actually Andrew too. This is
It would
really
have been Andrew. That's right. It would have been if that had been Andrew, he would have been done away with. Um,
and that's especially, I mean, and he's pretty famous too. It's like what it's odd
he
to
would
think
have
of
been
the
banished.
logic behind this. This would have been a very big deal. I mean, it would have been terrible if something happened to you, of course, but like, I mean, this scenario really should make people think. What is so important about this cave to make it worth that much where they would go to yeah, just taking someone out. We do know many people who have gone underground and never come back.
Yes,
A lot of situations
yes,
about this.
yes, yes.
um,
We have other stories, as you rightly say, we do,
I had
and
mentioned in
not just reported. I mean, my mind goes back, and I have it. I'll take it to my conscience till I die. Where that lady, the mother of one of the group associated to the six who heinously lost their lives in the village, where she was on her hands and knees clinging and pleading, crying her eyes, pleading with us to do something to save her son because he had been snatched and he was the one. He didn't die down the hole. He was in jail. But I understand since that he's gone. He went. Another one.
Um,
Um,
this
so
is the
it's
story.
dangerous. But the
Yeah.
stakes on this, Trevor, and I'll maybe pull this back to establish the link beyond any doubt. The stakes here are sufficient that utterly priceless evidence, artifacts, and so forth can be smashed by commissioned gangs to go in and do that job by authorities of some description. Okay.
Mhm.
And people potentially can lose lives over it. That's something, the the importance of it has to have um, not a price tag on it, perhaps, but a value on it that is so high that it warrants those actions. And what I am saying, I go in line with others who speculate from their own stance that Giza indeed was a place pre-catastrophe, that just like Cappadocia and other places in the world where a buried city exists and repository. And it is what that has to offer that that all of this secrecy and everything else happens with it.
Yeah.
And it is the reason why now we're so excited that following the revelations to the things that Zahi and others said, no, we know everything there is about this. There is nothing more to find. The Great Pyramid, and we know now it is like a cheesecake, just the same as the plateau. It is like a cheesecake, just the same as the guardian of the cross told us that the people from below come to him, and he sometimes goes to them down below. That there are still those existing from a previous time lineage, and that this is below ground. It isn't fantasy. It's for real. And it is so real that people are killed for it
Yeah. Without a second thought.
because certain other people want to possess it for themselves.
And make sure no one else does. Yeah. Yeah. Very good point. Um, Thank you for sharing these stories. I think are absolutely so important for the public to hear about this, to really nail down how important this is, how significant, and how quickly they're ready to make decisions like that if it threatens the exposure of these lower places. Now, what we're going to do today as we continue moving through this info, we still got plenty more to get to here, but we are bringing proof that these are lies, that the complex does go further. And maybe it's a good time to actually pull up the let's look at the quote from Henry Salt, because this is one of
Oh,
the
yeah,
I have it here. I'll pull it up and I'll give it a read through. This is the diary entry that Salt gave us. 1817, you said it was.
yeah,
And this is incredible evidence proving what Zahi kind of denied right from the beginning, but that it went past the tube tunnel. But let me just read this. Salt's memoirs describe how he investigated in 1817, together with other well-known Italian Egyptologists, Giovanni Caviglia, a catacomb system which was several hundred meters long. This is just before the quote, but this in itself is very telling, because we know that the entire length of the cave we know of is maybe 100 meters or a little more. So them saying that it was several hundred meters is the first clue. So he says, I have little to say. We entered into one and followed up our researches through rude and craggy vaults several hundred yards into the rock. So that alone proves they went much further than the end of what we know. Creeping at times on our hands and knees among the bones of carcasses of camels and other animals carried there by hyenas which frequent these caves. There is also our second clue, creeping at times on our hands and knees, there is only one place we know of within the known areas of the cave and tomb complex where you would have to crawl on your knees. And this is what you have called the tube tunnel, which we're getting to. It's this is absolute proof that that is the section they were talking about, because there's nowhere else you'd have to actually crawl through. So they're definitely talking about going through the tube tunnel, and that it goes several hundred yards, not just 100 yards, or a little more than that. And then the quote continues here. At last, we entered by a forced passage, that's the tube tunnel, through a thin wall into a spacious chamber, which presented nothing to our view but bare and moldering walls. This is by oil lamps. This chamber communicated with three others of equal dimensions, which issued many labyrinthine passages, which had too intricate and uninteresting appearance to induce us to advance. Captain Caviglia informed me that afterwards he advanced in another direction 300 feet farther, but found nothing to tempt him to continue.
In actual fact, Trevor, it was the notes that drew me to the conclusion, which really was thinking or stating or thinking the obvious. But it led me to act on getting further evidence further down the plateau from the entrance of NC2. And that was where Sultan Caviglia's notes clearly state that they proceeded much further than the tube tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah, you have
So
two absolute points of context. The having to bend down and crawl, absolutely evidence it's the only place in the whole structure where you have to do that is the tube tunnel. Plus saying it was hundreds of yards, that's way more than the, approximately 350 feet span of that cave as
exactly.
to the tube tunnel. So yeah, I'm not sure
So
if it totally caught this entire. I'll just reread this very last part in case I didn't get it all recorded. Where they said this chamber communicated with three others of equal dimensions. And he's talking about a spacious chamber. So three spacious chambers, which each issued many labyrinthine passages. Um, so this is, he says many, but he's talking about three chambers that have these passages leading out. So there's at least three continuing passages directly past the tube tunnel, which we're going to get into talking about now. But yeah, and then we're going to show also that we have found an additional invisible door, we'll call it, that we believe is a continuation of another one of the passages. So this is where we get into some really, really exciting stuff about what's actually down there. And I want to pull up some of the video that I got this was a couple months ago in November, December of 2024. I just got in here. This was many years of talking with you about the whole thing, seeing your whole diagrams and models, which I'll also cut in an excerpt of some of the models you built, showing so that people can get a better idea of exactly how all these spaces are interconnected. But you know that I've been obsessed with this. I heard about it ever since, Andrew had first brought it up back then. It was 2008. I was in 2006 already obsessed with the underground of Egypt, of Giza at that point when I first met John Anthony West. And so I was looking out for anything like this. And it was just a couple months ago that after talking about this with you for so long as well, I finally just had a feeling, walked over there and found the gate left open. So what I'm thinking we could do now is I could play through some of the footage of when I first found the open gate. And I remember when I sent you a photograph of me in front of the open gate, I could just feel you. I could just feel your excitement. I knew you would be
Oh,
freaking out to see this
totally.
happen. I'll say also, in full disclosure, there was one other person aside from Andrew, Nigel, and Sue, and aside from Zahi, who went in after with the Chasing Mummies team. There was one guy on YouTube. I don't remember his name, but someone happened to go out there and find the gate unlocked and filmed all this stuff inside, but not very thorough. Just Aside from those teams, there's never been anyone revealing the footage from in here. This is the right-hand corridor. Someone's got to come down here with some garbage bags and clean this place up. Now, all of these chambers on this side have floors of rubble and sand. So none of us, not Andrew Collins or Richard or Zahia Was, are sure if there's not more shafts leading down from these floors. None of us will know unless we excavate some of this sand out. Look at that wooden door there. What was that for? Covering up that hole, probably. And what's in the bottom of that hole? That's probably another shaft. That is the first on the left with the window. This is the second on the right. That's the first on the right. Second on the right, full of sand. Look how thin that wall is. I'm gonna come in. I didn't come into this chamber yet, this deep, so let's see. Okay. Huge bones everywhere. Yes. Giant chamber. Again, floor is covered with sand, except where you can see this window. Very thin wall got knocked out, and these are all chunks of this wall. Look how thin this wall is. That's the wall between these two chambers. Right here. It's like 1 inch, it kind of tapers out to about 1 inch. And even if you go a bit deeper, it's only about a foot wide, even at the thickest parts. Unbelievable. Amazing. So, here's the second chamber. And up in that corner, that's where it connects over to the chamber up top. Look how thin that wall is, too. Okay. Get some photos of this room. Here's again the back end of the right corridor. And you come to the right off the bat. Let's go inside this one, the second or third chamber on the left-hand side of the right-hand corridor. Wow. Incredible. Looks like another shaft right there, going down. Again, we're not seeing bedrock on any of these floors. So we don't know if there's more shafts leading straight down from all of these chambers. Definitely a lot of trash blown in here. So we have to ask the Egyptians, please take care of this site. Please clean this up. Please get some attention here. Take care of this treasure. Absolute treasure. Pay attention to this site. Tomb of the Birds and the Cave of the Snake are an incredibly important subterranean structure. It connects way deeper into the Giza Plateau. We know from satellite imagery that these caves connect all the way over to the middle pyramid, go straight underground there. And our friends Corrado Malanga and Filippo Biondi, they have done not only incredible satellite-based scans of the Great Pyramid, showing over 20 chambers inside of it that no one's ever seen before. But they've recently also scanned the middle pyramid, and they found a long string of corridors underneath that pyramid. It's called G2. The traditional archaeologists call it Khafre's pyramid, but these caves lead all the way to that pyramid, and they likely connect even to the chambers that Malanga and Biondi discovered under that one, and probably to the chambers that the Japanese team just discovered in the Mastaba field to the west of the Great Pyramid and to the north of the Second Pyramid. And we think these caves come out to the doors that are in the northwest corner of the middle pyramid, which have been blocked up and sealed off with stones right after our friend Richard Gabriel exposed all of this and showed what a treasure this place is. So not only are they covering it up, but they're filling it with trash. They're disrespecting it. It's not right. Artifacts in here are getting broken. We have proof of it. Richard has shown that there used to be artifacts all over the ground in here, and he came in, walked right over them, documented them, filmed them, left them to be. Then he came back after a certain other group had been here, and all those artifacts were gone. Many of these artifacts were destroyed, broken, vandalized, graffiti on the ceilings. This is disgusting. This cannot happen. We need some attention on this site. We need the Egyptians to clean it up in here and let the world see it. It was after Andrew Collins rediscovered it all that Dr. Hawass came in saying that there were no cave systems at all connected to this tomb. A couple months later, he took his team in with the Chasing Mummies TV show he was doing, and he went all the way into the cave system that comes out of here after he denied it existed, which is right back there. And then he got to the so-called end of it and said it didn't go any further, which was a lie. It does go further. Henry Salt and Giovanni Caviglia proved that in their mapping of the whole complex. They went past that tunnel at the end, the tube tunnel, we call it. But that's where Zahi stopped. That's where Andrew Collins stopped. That's as far as Richard's gotten, but now we have proof that someone sealed it up from the other side, because it connects through tunnels that we can see from satellite scans that go straight to the second pyramid. So that's the Tomb of the Birds, and I'm so grateful that I just happened to come out here today and someone left the lock off the gate. Thank you, someone. Okay. That's it, the Tomb of the Birds. I'm gonna take a water break here because I can barely breathe. Very dusty. Okay. That's the Tomb of the Birds. Door was open today. I got to go in and get my first chance to see the entire cave system. It goes straight to that pyramid. Probably that one too. Amazing. Okay. This is the North Cliff 2, NC2. The Tomb of the Birds. NC2 complex gets its name. Alright, we're heading back. We're just leaving the NC2 complex. It's right down the hill here. But what's this shaft? Let's just see electrical. the Tomb of the Birds. There's the restaurant. It's the Khufu restaurant they built. Very expensive. Food is not so great. But it's covering over. Tomb of the Birds is right down the hill underneath here. And some of these foundations here might be even causing harm to the site. Not a fan of this restaurant going up here. Bill and I went to eat there one day, and we just got tea or coffee because it's so expensive. And nothing I wanted to eat there anyway. So here's the mastaba field again. The Japanese are working right here. Okay, we just got into the Tomb of the Birds. I mean me, completely alone. Snuck over here, had the door open, and that was incredible. Very few people alive today have ever been inside that tomb in that cave system. It's me, Andrew Collins, Richard Gabriel, Zahir Wass and his film team. Some of the other guys with Andrew. One guy I saw on YouTube happened to catch it up one day, and me. The only people I know of alive today who have been in there. We gotta protect that site, it's very important.